Now, in this episode, we're going to take you on a journey profiling into the life and crimes of Darren Devon Van. Now, he's a fascinating serial killer who would take women to various abandoned houses in the city, strangle them, and then just leave them to be found by whoever wandered in. I want to welcome in my co-host, Brandy Diamond. And Brandy, here's a serial killer, not just preying upon women, but creating victims of adults, children, anyone who might possibly wander in these abandoned houses and find a dead body.
Yeah, I'm curious. We always know that they have a place, geographic profiling of where they like to be, where they want to keep their victims. Sometimes they leave them in the wide open and sometimes they hide them. So I'm curious to see how this guy really unfolds his crimes, especially in these abandoned houses.
Yeah, and unfortunately, being a cop for as long as I've been, I've walked into more than one abandoned house on a suspicious person call or a suspicious odor call and found a dead body. So it can be quite shocking if you're not prepared for it. All right, let's get into the case, and I'm going to give you some social commentary, I think, in a couple of spots here. I usually don't do that, but going through this case, I was just like, we've seen so many of these guys escape justice
I know.
and,
I'm
and do it.
just thinking that when I was looking through some of this.
Yeah, and do it legally. It is so frustrating to me as a cop. You know who the bad guys are? You keep them in jail, you have less crime, less victims. But I'll get into that in a minute and talk about that. But Darren Devon Van, born March 21st, 1971, he targeted vulnerable women, like many of them do, strangled them, and dumped their bodies in abandoned properties. And not only do I want to talk about the criminal justice system, I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit here about these abandoned properties. This is not the first serial killer that we've seen that works in a city that is in total chaos. Crime is high, victimization is high, abandoned buildings, terrible economy, and they use it to their advantage. But anyway, Van was finally arrested October 18th, 2014, for the murder of a 19-year-old at a hotel in Hammond, Indiana. So as soon as he changed his MO a little bit, he basically got caught. So I think that's something else we can talk about. But then after being caught, he immediately confessed and led police to the women's bodies in abandoned structures all around Gary, Indiana. So, Brandy, we always try to look for interesting and fascinating case with little twist here and there. And this one certainly has enough to talk about.
Yeah, and again, he's from Indiana. Crimes are happening in Indiana. Again, comfort spots where he's born. We've seen that before. But let's get into his early life a little bit. And we want to take a look at that first and see if there's any sort of predecessors coming into why he, is going to start committing these crimes. Like you said, he's born in Indiana, graduated from high school, had one other sibling, a younger brother. He actually married for 16 years to the same woman. Interesting, she was about 30 years older than him. Now, the age gap, I think of like a mom, more of a motherly figure. Sometimes maybe that's missing in their life. We haven't really talked about his parents quite yet, but sometimes you see that. But the marriage lasted 16 years. So had to be some sort of relationship and affection there. So I'd like to unfold that a little bit with you. But she ends up filing for divorce, John, in August of 2009. And their marriage was then dissolved in 2011. He, again, joins the military. We've seen this before. He was in the United States Marines. he was actually received an other than honorable discharge in 1993 after joining just in 1991. So he only lasted a couple of years.
Right. And we've seen that several times. These guys kind of go into the military, but they don't fit into that structure. They don't fit into the command and control and, the military life. And we certainly saw that with him in some of his early crimes. And as you said, there are some indicators out there of what later life was going to be like, and we often see this. He was convicted in Lake County, Indiana, of a misdemeanor residential burglary. Now, it was non-violent, but he was convicted of it, and then he was arrested again. So why was he going in the house is the first thing. Non-violent burglary related offense, unauthorized entry into the house. Was he actually going to burglarize something, or was he going to look for somebody? And I think we're going to see this kind of play out here. He was arrested in Gary, Indiana, again for threatening the life of his girlfriend. And of course, this is before he was married. And he was charged with a Class D felony and spent 90 days in jail. So already at a very young age here, we've got him breaking into houses, and we've got him threatening the life of his girlfriend. Now, he was also arrested in December 2007, so 3 years later, in Austin, Texas, for aggravated sexual assault after attacking and raping a 25-year-old Hispanic woman. Now, this is where I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit here, Brandy. He was initially charged with a first-degree felony. That's as high as it goes. Aggravated sexual assault. With a potential sentence of up to 99 years. Okay, so we're not talking jaywalking. We're not talking shoplifting. He's already committed these other offenses, and we know that, the burglary and the domestic violence and stuff. But now we have him charged with aggravated sexual assault with a potential sentence of 99 years. But he pled out to a lesser first-degree felony of sexual assault and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Now, that may not seem like a big deal to most people, but this is a felony, aggravated sexual assault. He raped this 25-year-old Hispanic woman, could have been there for 99 years, instead takes a plea deal for only 5. What have we learned about these offenders, Brandy, when we let them out?
They're just going to continue to do what they're going to do. John, I want to ask you something, because how, let's just say from a court perspective, a charge perspective, right? First degree felony, up to 99 years, let him plead out. He pleads out, spends 5 years. How do you go from wanting to charge a man to put him, this is life in prison. I mean, right? 99 years. This is
Right.
going to possibly put him in there for life. But how do you then is it the courts, John? Is it the charges? Is it the charges that the police and that they're filing against him? How do you think this man deserves 99 years and then think this man only deserves 5?
Yeah, a lot of the problem lies with the prosecutors and what they want to charge and what they want to prosecute. They are always looking to keep their prosecution rate high, quite frankly, and are willing to plead down to lesser charges. Now, a lot of them are going to tell you, well, we never could have convicted him on that. We didn't have the evidence. So, but if you indicted him, if you charged him, if you arrested him, you had to have something. And so to me, this is just a game that a lot of these prosecutors play to get their conviction rate, to clear the cases, to clear the judge's docket. And a lot of times these judges are more than willing to accept a plea like that. They're not really looking into the background of these offenders. Obviously, they don't have a crystal ball. They can't look in the future. But this is our criminal justice system. I was, listening to a case the other day. Lady convicted of four DWIs, not one, not two, not three, four DWIs. And the judge basically says, well, I'm going to suspend your license, but I'll give you back a hardship license because we don't want it to be a hardship. Well, she shouldn't have got arrested 4 times. She shouldn't have been drunk driving 4 times. She shouldn't have violated the law 4 times. I see these cases all the time, and we see them with serial killers, but I tell you, it happens. Being on the streets, I'd arrest somebody. We'd take them to jail, and they'd have a rap sheet with no exaggeration, Brandy, 20, 30, 40 arrests on their rap sheet. And they play the system, and it's a revolving door. And unfortunately, right, you got judges, well, we're being compassionate. No, what you're doing is creating more victims. That's what do you really think that after this guy spends only 5 years in jail, he's going to come out and he's going to be a new man and turn over a new leaf? No, he's going to be the same criminal as he went in, except more educated. We always say prison is college for criminals. And, so that's what gets me. And I don't know why with this case, it got me more than others, because we've seen it over and over and over again. And I've seen it for the last 4 decades.
And then where's the court support in the victimology here?
Yeah.
How do you go as a victim perspective of thinking this guy I'm going to get justice for what happened to me. The court is going to hold him accountable for what he did to me. 1st-degree felony assault, sexually assaulted me, and then letting him just plead out. I mean, as a victim, my God,
Yeah.
And so I feel like you have politics blended in with, you can't always please everyone. But John, this is just the beginning of dropping the ball with this guy.
Well, and that's, the courts will say, well, we let victims, give a victim impact statement in certain cases, and we'll let them testify in other cases. But you're right. Is it justice? No, there's no justice. I mean, this poor 25-year-old girl was sexually assaulted, aggravated, right? So probably had a weapon or made a threat or something. I don't remember the circumstances, but that's a major crime. And is 5 years good enough? And of course, he's going to come out. And because he was only given 5 years, when he registered as a sex offender, I don't know who did this. I don't know what the criteria is. Just another part of the criminal justice system that's screwed up. He was assessed as a low risk for reoffending again or for violence based on the state's evaluation tools. What the heck tools are they using if this guy's already had 1, 2, 3 arrests that we know of and an aggravated sexual assault? I mean, other than killing somebody, how is he low risk? But again, because of the plea deal, because of the evaluation tools the state used, they basically said, he's low risk, and he relocates back to Indiana. So just frustrating, for me as a cop. It's you're catching these guys, you're risking your life, you're putting them in jail, you're trying to solve these crimes, and it seems like the criminal justice system is working behind you, against you, I mean.
It's almost like there is no looking into the background or evaluation. It's just maybe looking at what he served. Oh, only 5 years. Okay, well, based on my I don't know, my algorithm or whatever they're using, that puts him at a low risk level. I'm sure there's some formula or something the state uses, but again, no back research on this stuff. I just feel like in many ways our system just fails. And this definitely is one of them because John, he goes back out and continues to commit crimes.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get on this topic, but the basic citizens community, a lot of times they're blaming the police. The police are doing their job. They're arresting, investigating. They're getting the bad guy off the street. They don't see the rest of the criminal justice system that breaks down. So with Van here, we don't see a lot of the usual precipitating stressors or background that we see. And it's because we've got very little information on his home life, his family life, things like that. But we certainly see somebody that was intelligent enough to graduate high school. He did go into the military, even though he kind of washed out really quickly. But the key indicator here is his crimes. The breaking and entering into homes, the beating of his girlfriend, and certainly the aggravated sexual assault of that poor young girl. So when we start looking at, you know, what are some of these factors that affect a typical serial killer profile? Almost all of his go to crimes. So that's what we track it back to.
Well, John, just 6 months later, he kills a woman, Tanya Gatlin, Black female, 27 years old, in Gary, Indiana. She was missing since January of 2014, strangled to death. Her body is then found in an abandoned house, along with the body of Sonia Billingsley at 413 East 43rd Avenue in Gary. Identity confirmed through DNA. So it wasn't, he was only out 6 months when she went missing.
Right, right, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. There is some, I don't know, unreasonable expectation, hope, desire. These guys are going to turn over a new leaf. No, they are who they are. Now, I'm not saying not. There are some folks that are rehabilitated, but the numbers, in my opinion, and I've only been doing this for over 40 years. In my opinion, the numbers are so small. How can they possibly make up for the number of victims that are created by letting these guys out? And like you said, not even 6 months later, he goes after somebody, and we're not talking about aggravated sexual assault this time. We're talking about, oh, you know what? I probably learned my lesson. I shouldn't leave them alive to testify and send me to prison, so I'll kill them.
I was just thinking when you just said that, it's almost that's that transition, right? It's not that he didn't want to keep doing this. He liked doing this. He's now out of prison. And like you said, don't leave any victims behind in order for him to testify and go back to jail.
No, we've seen that with other serial killers as they evolve, right? They kind of learn from their mistakes. And, I don't know, but certainly he left a victim alive, ended up going to prison for it. There's got to be some thought in his head going, I'm still going to do what I want to do. I'm still going to kidnap him. I'm still going to rape him, right? I'm still going to strangle him because that's what he likes doing. But you know what? I'm going to kill him too.
Well, I feel like he had 5 years to start planning this. I mean, he committed this crime just 6 months after getting out of prison.
Oh, yeah.
So I think for 5 years, he was kind of trying to figure out how he's going to be able to continue to do this without being caught.
And what else does he figure out? The abandoned house shtick, right? I mean, that's what he figures out. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But you're right. There's a lot of time to plan when you're locked up for 5 years.
Yeah. All right. So victimology right now, primarily young to middle-aged women, 19 years old to 53 years old. Most, many were sex workers, drug users, marginalized community, including Black and Indigenous women. Easy to isolate, using escort services. We've seen this in a few cases. Street encounters, low immediate reporting risk, right? Maybe they won't be missed. Nobody's going to be looking for them. And all of his murders occurred between 2013, 2014. So we're only talking about a year, John.
Right. And look how many victims are created in just 1 year. And if he didn't change his MO, which was working for him, he might never have been caught. So was he devolving? Was he just sloppy? I don't know. We're going to find that later. But yeah, all these murders occur in basically a year period of time. And again, it's the vulnerable members of society, the prostitutes, the drug users, the marginalized people that are out there. And so he knows the victim group, right? He knows, and he's back home in Gary, Indiana. He knows the outlay, the layout of the city. He knows the city is in crisis, high crime rate, high murder rate, horrible housing situation. People are going broke, bad economy. And just like we saw in the serial killer in LA, he took advantage of those very surroundings.
Hmm. And I also thought about the fact that, well, we talked about Sonia Billingsley when we discussed the first victim, Tanya Gatlin. They were actually found in the same abandoned house. Um, and then again, we're talking about a year. So I think there was a lot of planning that went into this. Again, the abandoned house thing, like you said, 5 years in prison is a long time to plan. But he strangles Sonia Billingsley, 53 years old, Black female in Gary, Indiana, reported missing February 7th of 2014. Again, that her body found along with Tanya Gatlin and identified through DNA. So found it interesting, John, that he brings the second victim to the first one, right?
Right.
He's not trying to move them around or place them in different places. They're found together.
Who does that remind you of?
Oh gosh. I was
The
trying to think earlier of which one.
What about the gardener? Howell, the gardener that was putting his victims basically in his quote garden. It was a 15-acre wooded area. But yeah, he must have felt comfortable in dumping him there, but to a point. So did something strike him and go, oh, maybe I need to put bodies in other houses too. But we see the same MO, right? Picking up the marginalized members of society, strangling them to death, and then dumping them in the abandoned building, in the abandoned houses.
So when we talk about his MO, right? You just mentioned that. What is backpage.com? Is this more, so was he using escort services and promising money and drugs? And when I saw Backpage, it kind of reminded me of that the serial killer up north, Craigslist. The
Yeah,
Craigslist
yeah.
killer, right? So Craigslist is a place where you would not go through like a madam. I'm just going to use the word madam, who sometimes overlooks these websites because that male or female is the one putting out the services to their employees, basically. But this to me is more like a one-on-one conversation, like Craigslist. Somebody puts out an ad, someone responds, you're talking to the person directly, promising money, drugs, where to meet up. This is kind of what it reminded me of.
Well, and that's right. And a lot of people assume that Backpage and other sites like that are one-on-one, but often the reality is many of this is run by big organizations. The girls are kind of put out to be, oh, one-on-one, and I don't have a pimp, I don't work for anybody, it's just you and me, and I'll meet you. But yeah, he was actually not just finding the women on the street, some of them he did, but he would go to Backpage and make an arrangement. Okay, I'll meet you at this motel at this time, and promise them money, obviously, drugs, sex, whatever it was. But yeah, he was using the internet to his advantage, and instead of just trolling around like pre-internet serial killers of the 70s and the 80s, he was saying, I can log on and I can arrange to meet this women. There is an electronic trail of it, but so many of these women are on the edge of society anyway and disappear he knew that his chance of being caught was fairly minimal. But it is kind of a new twist of serial killers that we have been, covering, was using Backpage or other types of web-based services to get the women. He does strangle them most of the time manually. Sometimes he'll do a ligature. He said that he only strangled them in a fit of rage, and yet it seemed that he had a lot of rage because look at the women he killed in a very, very short period of time. And he knew enough to dump them in those many, many, many abandoned buildings in Gary, Indiana. They were his dumping grounds. And this is my second little soapbox here. My first is, him getting out early and prisoners being released early and creating victims. But what about the city not doing its job? What about the city not going out and tagging these abandoned buildings, holding the owners responsible, leveling these structures, selling them, doing a tax? There's a lot of methodologies that the city can use to make sure the city is neat and clean. And it is amazing to me, Brandy, as I've traveled all over the country and all over the world. There are some cities, and if people don't believe it when I say it, they don't tolerate crime. They just don't tolerate it. No, we are not going to have the criminal element here. We are going to be tough on crime. Which means we're going to be tough on code enforcement, means we're going to be tough on everything. We are not going to tolerate the criminal element. And you have other cities, oh, well, there's nothing we can do. We're understaffed, under-resourced. It's the elected officials and the people that vote for the elected officials that let the city be crap or let the city be awesome. And it's the same thing. I've seen that when we talk about cities, counties, school districts, whatever taxing authority you want. And in this case, Gary, Indiana had one of the highest murder rates in the world, but they also had a city that was in squalor. And he took advantage of it and used it to his benefit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're dealing with crime, I mean, he knows the police force's resources are going to the crime and all the murders and everything going on at the time, but they're not checking abandoned buildings. I mean, they've got other things to do, right? I mean, he figured this out, which again, he's from there, right? From the area, just leaves them there. He ends up strangling Tracy Martin, black female, 41 years old, reported missing June 26, 2014. Again, her body is found at one of those abandoned houses at 2200 Massachusetts Street on October 19th. Again, body identified through genetic DNA testing. But yeah, I think he just knew where the state's resources were going and the city's resources were going. And he figured that, I mean, how easy is it to just leave a body? He doesn't have to dig anything up. He doesn't have to bury anything.
Yep.
He doesn't have to, I mean, he's not trying to conceal this at all. He's just putting them in an abandoned house that no one ever goes in.
Yeah, and if any of the neighbors look, what are they used to seeing around the abandoned buildings? Homeless people going in and out, transient people going in and out. If they see an extra person walk in and out of there, they're going to think nothing of it at all. They're not going to call the police. Nobody's worrying about it. And that's what I mean. The city created conditions and allowed conditions to be ripe for crime, and in this case, ripe for a serial killer. Now, on each episode of True Crime and Wine, we feature a wine. And this week, we're going to feature the fourth wine in our investigation series. That's that series that we partnered with Wine Shop at Home, 6 wines in the series. And today we're going to feature Follow the Clues Cabernet Sauvignon. This is a bold, expressive wine with rich aromas of blackberry and dark cherry, complemented by hints, just little hints, of mocha and even cedar. On the palate, it delivers a full bodied experience with layers of plum and savory notes. With this dry red wine, you're going to get a full bodied experience with all the clues pointing to this Cabernet Sauvignon being on your wine rack. And if I haven't mentioned it, $1 from each bottle is donated to the DNA Dope Project. That is a 501c3, and that group helps law enforcement and the community by naming unidentified remains using investigative genetic genealogy. The future of law enforcement and the future of solving many of these crimes. So, for our listeners and viewers out there, if you'd like to purchase one or the entire series of wines, simply click on the link in the bio to the podcast description or the bio in our social media, which is at JJ True Crime and Wine. You're going to love the investigation series from True Crime and Wine Shop at Home.
Okay, John. So we're about to talk about the next victim, Christine Williams. But the one thing I noticed was that the address changed to 4330 Massachusetts Street, October 19th. We're going to talk about Christine Williams. So why the different address? Is he changing his MO? Is he moving bodies? What do we have here?
Yeah, I think what you see is a change in MO because maybe he's evolving a little bit. Maybe he's figuring out, well, I probably shouldn't keep going back to that location. What if somebody finally sees me? What if somebody calls the cops? Then I'm stuck in a house with not just one body, but 3 or 4 or 5 or however many he starts. So we do see a change in his MO. And he's going to change his MO one other time, which is going to lead to him being captured. So sometimes these guys think they're a little smarter than they are. In this case, I think he might have said, wow, 2 bodies in one house. That's probably enough. There's enough abandoned houses out here. I can go to a different house with a different body nearly every day. And so we see already we're into June, and he's already got 3 victims under his belt, and he's continuing on here.
So Christine Williams was a Black female, 36 years old. She, again, is from Gary, Indiana, mother of 4, John, and was working at the time of her death. So a woman working hard, trying to support her 4 kids. Her mother-in-law stated that she had not heard from Williams since February of 2014. Christine is strangled to death. Her body was found, again, in that 4330 Massachusetts Street on October 19th.
No, that's a different one. It's the same street, Brandy. That's a different address. He picked another house again. And so maybe he felt comfortable on Massachusetts Street, right? Because now we've got not 1, but 2 different abandoned houses on Massachusetts Street where he left a body in. So again, I think he said, you know what? I don't want to get caught with multiple bodies. So there's enough, and that's what's crazy. There's enough of these squalid, abandoned buildings here in this section of the city that I can pick a new place anytime I want.
Do we know what he found about Massachusetts Street? Do we have any reason? Did he ever say why? I don't know. Why stay on the same street? That seems a little...
Yeah, I don't know. Was it convenient to where he was meeting the women? Was it convenient to where he was picking them up on the street? Was there a less traffic, high number of prostitutes, maybe a lot of drug dealing? To me, this is very, very similar to the serial killer in Los Angeles who used the chaos in Los Angeles, right? The South Los Angeles, South Central specifically. And he used the chaos of prostitutes, drugs, crime to hide in plain sight. Remember, they had a billboard searching for him a block from his house, but yeah, so I see this killer as another killer that's using the chaos around him and going, my gosh, no one's even going to be looking for me. Um, again, this is not a rookie criminal. He had been committing crimes for a long time, had done a prison sentence. He was very organized in some of his attributes, like calling and using an escort service to arrange the girls or going online to Backpage. So he wasn't just one that would go, hey, I'm going to go randomly pick up a girl on the street. I'm going to find him online, or I'm going to call an escort service. I'm going to arrange for this. So obviously, he didn't care if somebody knew his identity, right? Because it was out there on a couple of different platforms. He was very consistent in strangulation, and so we see that a lot of times in organized killers. Their MO is very consistent. He knows he doesn't have to bring. He's a convicted felon. He's not carrying a weapon. He's not bringing a weapon to the crime or from the crime. So again, he's pretty street smart, I guess is what you want to say. He knows not to carry a weapon. He knows not to put more than one body in a house at the time. He knows the chaos of the city is going to conceal his crimes. And yet he's kind of sloppy or disorganized in other respects because he's not hiding them, like you said. Right? He's not burying him. He's not covering him up. He's not taking him to the woods. He's doing kind of the easy thing, just dumping him in an abandoned building and, leaving quickly, not even worried about how they're found, when they're found, who finds them. He's kind of like, I'm done with them and I'm going to throw him in this building.
Yeah, and also, I was thinking about the fact that he's choosing different houses. We're about to talk about Tira Beatty, who was actually found on the 1800 East 19th Avenue on October 19th. But I was thinking about his using the city's resources, right? Being able to pull this off because he doesn't think he's going to be noticed or recognized. And then I think about him trying to find women online, John, versus, like you said, hitting the streets, right? Which we see in a lot of serial killers. But is it because I mean, to me, he's doing everything easy. Like this is what I'm saying. You like putting the body in the house, finding them online, doesn't have to approach them make eye contact, see them at first, right? Pick them up off the street, less witnesses to that. So I see him as a person who wants to commit these crimes but keep it simple and easy. He's not going far. I mean, he lives in the area. He's from this area. So this to me is a serial killer of convenience. I don't have to work very hard to do this. I can find them this way. I can just put them here and, go back to my house 2 miles away. So I see him as trying to be as easy as possible, but smart, like you said, not carrying a weapon. He's a convicted felon. Knowing that if he was pulled over, right, or found that he had entered one of the houses, maybe could easily explain that, or at least not be held accountable for anything, but maybe some trespassing or looking around.
Right.
But he doesn't have a weapon. So I think easy is what I think when I'm looking at what he's doing.
Maybe we should have titled this episode "The Convenient Serial Killer." That's a better title. I wish you had told me about that. That's a better title.
That's just what I'm feeling with this guy. He wants to keep it super simple for himself, but then get the satisfaction, like you said.
Or
of,
lazy.
Lazy. Yeah, easy, lazy,
lazy.
convenient. That is what I'm feeling with this guy.
Yeah, I mean, we've got killers that, go and pick up people in other cities or cross state lines or, head to big prostitution areas in big cities or whatever. This guy's like doing it in his own backyard. So it's almost, easy or lazy. I can, sit in my living room and get online and go on Backpage and order up an escort and tell her to meet me at the 4300 block, which if it's a known prostitution area, say, hey, no big deal. I'll meet you there, and we can trade money or sex or drugs or whatever you want. And yeah, yeah. So a convenient, an easy, a lazy, but still a murderous serial killer.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Tira Beatty, black female, 28 years old, left to go meet a friend, John, on January 13th, 2014, and just never came back. Her family waited to hear from her. They gave her a few days, and then eventually they report her missing later that month. Her body is then found in an abandoned house at that 1800 East 19th Avenue on October 19th.
Yeah, so another location, right? Now he's moved off Massachusetts, and he's over on 19th Avenue. So he's getting the women in different ways, strangling them all, but then dumping them in different houses all along the way. And from a profiling standpoint, 28, 40s, 50s, a mother of four, a younger prostitute. I don't see a pattern here. Again, it might go back to what you were saying about ease and convenience. Is that the person that he saw online and it was easy to make a date for her? Is that the person he drove by and picked up and it was just real easy? He didn't have to do anything. But I don't see, a fixed victim profile like we see in a lot of cases, right? Black, female, tall, lighter skin, whatever it is. A lot of times these killers have very specific victimology profiles. I'm just not seeing that here.
So I did want to ask you about his what is he getting the rise out of, right? Because we talk about this with the serial killers. What is that need and satisfaction that they're trying to feel, to release, whatever it might be?
Yeah.
Is he sexually assaulting any of these victims, John? Do we know, or is he just meeting them, having a little bit of conversation, then immediately killing them?
Well, I think that there was some, sex with each one of them involved. Matter of fact, there were some elements in the case that maybe even pointed to post-mortem. We're not sure about that, but certainly this is a power control killer that we have here. He knows these victims are weak. He knows they're vulnerable. And he wants to have power over them. He wants to control them. He wants to strangle them. And what do we know about serial killers that strangle? They want it up close. They want it personal. They want to feel the life leaving that person. That's kind of almost that godlike complex we talk about sometimes, the ultimate power, right? When it takes a lot. You and I have talked about this before. It takes a lot to strangle somebody to death. They're kicking, they're fighting, they're biting, they're doing everything they can to stay alive. And you're right there up on them, on top of them, strangling them. And it takes minutes and minutes and minutes, before they pass out, become unconscious, or you crush their throat and kill them. So it is not an easy way to kill. It is not an easy way to die. So from somebody that has got these characteristics of lazy or easy or convenient, I see this as a power thing, and I see that he gets his high from the murder itself. These guys, most of the time, they're doing it because they enjoy it and they enjoy different aspects of it. I would focus in here on the actual homicide, the murder, the strangulation. That's where he's getting his joy and his power and his control from. And he's just discarding him, right? He's dumping him. He's not concealing him. He's not covering him up. But he's smart enough to move around from house to house to house. The other thing is, these houses may be very convenient to him on his way home, or on his way, to another location or whatever. But certainly they're all in his comfort zone in Northwest Gary, Indiana. And they're all in this huge section of the city that is experiencing this decay. And much like the trash man in LA that we talked about, maybe he's just saying, wow, look at this neighborhood. Nobody cares. So what do I care if I dump a body here?
After he's arrested, this is when police are going to find the body of Aneth Jones, Black female, 35 years old, last seen alive on October 8th, 2014, and she was reported missing 2 days later. Now, after he's arrested, he leads police, John, to the house where her body is found.
Yeah, and this is eh, eh, well, this is after he's arrested. He leads her to her, but he leads them to all of them. So for whatever reason, it was a fairly easy confession for him to make, in saying, you arrested me for one offense, but I did quite a few others, and she was just another one. But again, the age, there's not a consistent victimology here. The only thing that's really consistent is he's still dumping them in abandoned houses. Now, I did find that something was interesting to me. We don't see this a whole lot. Before the police investigated the murder, and we haven't gotten to that yet, that Van was detained for, a man named Thomas Hargrove, who is the founder of the Murder Accountability Project, together with a Gary, Indiana deputy coroner, attempted to persuade police there were 18 similar murders and that they actually had a serial killer there in Gary, Indiana. But the police didn't seem to link them or want to link them. So in this case, we've got citizens and an official, a deputy coroner, saying, we're seeing these bodies. Now, what I find even more interesting is look at the number they said. They said at least 18. And we know that he took them to the bodies of, what, 6, or 7, but not 18. And we do know that there were gaps throughout this 1 year. So could some of those gaps be filled in by these other people that this independent murder accountability project and deputy coroner were pointing out?
This is a deputy coroner. So forget about just forget about the average person the sleuths who look into crimes
Right.
and bring information to police, which still can be very helpful. And I hope police do take that into accountability and look into those things.
Well,
But
it
you
is.
have
Look
you
at our
have a deputy
audience.
coroner. You have professionals. You have the people seeing the bodies, John, bringing this information back to police. Why are they always so easy to dismiss this kind of thing? We see it too much. I have interviewed people, John, who have brought some significant information to police to solve crimes 20, 30, 40 years old, and they do nothing with the information.
Yeah. So on a cold case, I don't know. That's hard to tell you why they don't do anything. Why don't they follow it up? Maybe they don't have the resources. I don't know. That's a different topic. On somebody bringing you 18 current cases and saying, in his professional opinion, and he's a professional, he is the deputy coroner, that these murders are linked, you've got to look into it. But what this goes back to, and I've seen it over and over again in city after city, it's bad PR. It doesn't matter if NBC and CBS and ABC are leading the news with you're the murder capital of the world, but you don't want people to know there's a serial killer working in your city. That's what it boils down to. And there's political pressure on law enforcement to say, If you can't prove it 100% and bring me the evidence right now and bring me the killer, we're not talking about a serial killer, because we're not going to bring it up because it's bad PR, and we're trying to get a convention to come to this city, or we're trying to recruit a business to come to this city, or we want to increase our tax base in this city, or we want to develop it. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous, again, from the victim standpoint, that they're getting killed, that they're dying out there, but these cities are worried about their image.
I mean, remember when all these bodies started surfacing in Lady Bird Lake in Austin? I mean, people wanted answers. What? Okay, so we're not talking about coincidences. How are all these bodies just all of a sudden appearing? And there's got to be a serial killer. Man, Austin said no serial killer, no serial killer. Everything's okay. But where this was happening was a very, very busy area where people go and flock every single week, every single weekend, and spend their money in the city of Austin. Police don't want people riled up. They don't want to get people scared and to not come to their city. But again, John, you have 18 bodies and you have a professional bringing this information to you. And I agree with you. I think it's even PR with cold cases. I mean, because when police say things and make decisions 10, 20 years, they kind of stick with some of that stuff, right? They don't want to look bad. So I'm going to say that I agree that it is absolutely 100% PR, and I think it even can possibly be that with cold cases.
Yeah, no, it can be. And it may be that individual officer, detective, or department doesn't want to look bad. But certainly, like you pointed out, we've got multiple places across this country where we have bodies turning up that have very similar MOs that appear to be disappearing from the same area, usually a popular area, nightclub area, something that is drawing tourists, something that's generating money, bodies being found in the same or similar locations. But we do not want to admit it's a serial killer because it's bad PR. But it's the exact same thing when these cities go to bid on, these huge soccer tournaments, football games, baseball, whatever. They want to draw the tourist in. They want the economic development, but they don't want to look bad. And so they may just adjust their numbers a little bit so they're not looking bad. We've seen this over and over and over again. And I don't know if that was the case here. I wasn't running Gary, Indiana at the time, but certainly I can tell you that just from a historical perspective, we've got many cities that they don't want the bad PR.
Well, and shout out to Murder Accountability Project for caring, for
Right.
noticing and caring and trying to be, especially in a place what Gary, Indiana was going through, and you have people paying attention, right? We want our community to pay attention to these things.
And even if they're wrong, Brandy, even if they're wrong, isn't that the same as a citizen coming forward with a piece of information? I used to say this all the time on the street. Tell me what you know. Tell me. I may not use it. It may have no bearing on the case at all, but you may have that diamond in the rough. You may have that gem there. You may have that nugget that I need that makes the entire case come together. It never hurts getting the information. I know on some big cases, we get information overload, but you know what? That's on us then to go through those tips and that information and try to find that nugget, because almost all the time it's out there. In the serial killer that I captured, we didn't find out till after we arrested him, or we're in the process of arresting him. Somebody had come forward weeks before saying, I think it's my boyfriend, my former boyfriend. He had a fascination with sex. He had a fascination with eyeballs. He was really deviant. And she went down the list, but it got buried in the leads and nobody saw it till afterwards. But my stance has always been, give us more, let us go through it, we'll figure it out. I invite everyone to follow True Crime and Wine on our social media channels. We can be found at JJ True Crime and Wine. Really easy. JJ True Crime and Wine. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you'd like to receive our monthly newsletter with links to upcoming live shows, wine offerings, true crime trivia, and much more, email us at truecrime@casarowines.com. That's CASSARO wines.com. And we'll add you to the newsletter. And also, you can email us at truecrime@casarowines.com. If you want to nominate a winery, a wine bar, or a tasting room near you to host a live in-person True Crime and Wine, that's right. I'll come out there. We've got requests from all over the country. I'm going through those, but you can send us a request also. Maybe we're already going to be in your neighborhood. Just send us the winery, wine bar, your favorite tasting room, their name, their phone number or email. We'll reach out to them and see if we can bring a live True Crime and Wine to your neighborhood.
I covered a case of when a woman who, John, they never found. They heard her scream. 5 witnesses heard her scream, and nobody called police. Not one of them. And it's better to be wrong and not make the call, right? Like, make the call, say you hear a woman scream, let them figure it out. But what you don't do is nothing. I'm a big believer in that. We have an obligation to take care of one another.
Yeah, and I don't know if you know it or not, but that was basically the history of Neighborhood Watch. It was a crime that occurred in New York City. A woman was brutally raped, and I'm pretty sure she was killed. I don't remember the circumstances, but multiple people saw it. They were looking out the window. They heard the screams. They saw the attacker. No one called, and that kind of led to this movement. You got to, get involved. Today, after 9/11, we say, see something, say something. But the bottom line is we want to know. And tell us about the last victim here.
Yeah, so this is sort of his demise. We talk about him putting the bodies in abandoned houses, but John, they meet at a Motel 6. He meets Africa Hardy, Black female, 19 years old. She is a prostitute. She is strangled with a telephone cord. Her body is then dumped into the bathtub at the Motel 6. October 17th, 2014, her body is found in the hotel. Phone records lead them to Van. So this is his demise, John.
Yeah, again, changing his MO. So he changed it a couple of times by moving the bodies to different abandoned houses. He messed up this time, though. Left the body in the motel to be found, and it wasn't hard for investigators to figure out. Going through Hardy's phone records, they located Van. And once they located him, he was in possession of several key pieces of evidence, including Hardy's phone. So not only did they track her phone records, but he actually had her phone in his possession. And then during the interrogation, he confessed not only to her killing, but to all of them, or at least the ones that he was willing to talk about in the abandoned homes. So changing his MO. And we don't know if he was killing so frequently he started to devolve. We don't know if he, for whatever reason, thought, I can't get the body out of this motel room without people seeing me. But to leave the body there in the motel was a pretty easy catch for the authorities.
Yep, easy lazy, right?
Yep.
So he does
Yeah.
confess, John. He confesses to 6 other homicides initially, but he leads the authorities to the victims, right? Tiara, Tracy, Christine, Sonia, Tanya, and Anith. All the bodies were found in those Gary properties on October 19th to 20th, 2014. Autopsies confirming the strangulation as the cause of death in each case, just
Yep.
like the coroner and the organization was really trying to get police to see. So he confesses. He starts talking.
Yep. Yeah, but you need more than a confession to get a conviction, and they have it here because they started using DNA and linking him to several of his victims. And I think Tracy Martin, I want to bring that one out. specifically because um, after the body was recovered, they went to the family and said, would you provide samples for us? We'd like to do some genetic testing and make sure this is exactly who it is so that we can tie everything up in a neat bow. And her family agreed to it. And we know how important DNA testing and genetic genealogy is today. They also recovered a pair of gloves from Van that he used to clean several of the crime scenes. So there we see again another more organized aspect of his crime. He took gloves to the crime scene, used it, and brought him back. And they recovered some souvenirs that he took from his victim. So this is not one of those cases that it's all confession, it's confession with DNA, with genealogy, with physical evidence, and souvenirs from the victims.
All right, so they got enough to go to trial, John. In 2014, he pleads not guilty to murder. Now, we've got a couple trial delays: 2015, 2016, 2017. Finally, in 2018, he pleads guilty to 7 murders in exchange for death penalty being dropped, and then is sentenced to 7 consecutive life sentences without parole.
Yeah, and I didn't want to bore you with the court stuff because it just makes me mad anyway. Delay after delay, an attorney that files this motion and that motion, and then the state wanted to try him and give him the death penalty, and then they said, well, wait a minute, we're not sure if we want to go after the death penalty, and let's back off of that. Okay, let's make a plea deal. Luckily, he was in jail during this whole time. That's the only good thing. But can you imagine the taxpayer money that was spent on a guy that confessed to 7 murders, that they had DNA evidence on, that they found souvenirs, that they found physical evidence? It's maddening to me. Again, this is going to be my anti-criminal justice system rant broadcast or whatever. But 2014, and it takes 4 years to finally figure out, yeah, we're going to let him plead so we can give him 7 consecutive life sentences.
Yeah, I just find that so unbelievable, to be honest with you. We talk about this all the time, how much resources and money it takes to put people in jail and to house them and to feed them and to use all of the resources it needs for them to have a quote unquote, like some sort of existence in prison. But I mean, when you delay court, it's very expensive to go to trial. I mean, it costs taxpayer money to do this stuff. And then again, just delay after delay. I mean, we see this, John, with the people who's sitting on death row, right?
Yep.
We used to talk about, death row, you would be on there 2-3 years, but now they're on there 20-30 years. So I don't know. Is it hoping people change? I'm not sure, John. I'm just not sure.
I don't know.
All right. So
yeah, go ahead.
Let's talk about this podcast host.
That's okay. You do one, we do one. Oh, look at this.
Yeah, let's okay, so 2021, Ben Kubrick, host of the Algorithm Crime Podcast, obtains a tape recordings via FOIA request in which Van confesses at length to interviewing detectives about numerous unsolved murders he had committed across the country. So what does he admit to, John?
He admits to killing dozens of women in Chicago, but also in California, North Carolina, Texas, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan. And I don't even think that includes the other ones, those 18 that the coroner had brought up initially. And this is what's interesting to me is we have this recording of him talking about it during the initial confession, and then we have it brought up again, by the podcast host that's going through these records and everything. But like many cases, there's not hard evidence. There's not hard links. He's willing to say, yeah, I killed him, but I don't remember when. I don't remember where. I don't remember how. So is this a killer trying to get more prison street cred? Is this a killer that really is admitting to things and says, you know what? What am I going to get out of this? I'm never going to get out. And so I really don't know the the reason for admitting to more crimes when you have nothing left to deal, right? Bundy on death row kept dealing because he kept putting off his execution. We see serial killers do that and string authorities out. And so I'm not sure. Would I put it past him? Absolutely not. Do I think maybe he was involved in those other 18 killings that the deputy coroner talked about? Absolutely so. But we really don't know here. But let me tell you, Brandy, just to finish up, what we do know here is this is an offender that should have been in jail, that was released from jail after a horrible aggravated sexual assault, that went on to kill at least 7 women we know of that he was convicted of, and he was able to hide in plain sight because of the city chaos and decay. So the crime here is not just the serial killer, it's the city. As we put a cork in this edition of the True Crime and Wine podcast, I want to remind our listeners that you can follow us on all of our socials at JJ True Crime and Wine. And we put a link to order all of our investigation series wines in our social media bios and in the podcast platform bios also. So you can enjoy the True Crime and Wine brands along with us as you listen or watch each show. So I think that wraps up pretty much all the business for today. And with that, I want to thank my co-host, Brandy Diamond, for joining me on this journey. And of course, our producer, Lauren Bedsel, back in the Corsicana Command Center for helping to make this show possible. And I invite you to join us for our next episode where we will present a serial killer who lured unwitting travelers to his castle-like estate just to kill them for sport. I'm John Matthews, and thanks for joining us on True Crime and Wine. Salud.